Hi, everybody. I am Saurav Shome, a teacher educator at Azim Premji Foundation and a part of the editorial committee of iwonder. And Radha,
Yes, I am Radha Gopalan, one of the editors of iwonder.
iwonder is a science magazine for middle and high school students, teachers, and students also for at one level. It features writings about the many dimensions of teaching and learning of science in class and outside classroom. This magazine, I Wonder, is published in three languages English, Hindi, and Kannada, twice a year. If you are a practicing science teacher, we invite you to write for us. And to do this, please send your ideas in 100 words or around 100 words to iwonder, iwonder at apu.edu.in. If you would like to receive updates of webinar and about the magazine and also to get a free print version of each of the issues, subscribe to us by following the link displayed in the description of this video. You can also catch us on Facebook. And welcome back to our monthly webinars. As you know, on the second Wednesday on every month, we invite authors of an article in iWonder for a live discussion. And for these webinars, we have with us Poornima Arun and Nishant, authors of the article. Place-based learning of science from our most recent issue published in June 2021. Poornima Arun is a founder member and head teacher of the Marudam Farm School, which started in 2009. She is involved in all aspects of running the school, from curriculum development to teacher training and administration. Poornima is an active member of the Alternative Education Network and started its Tamil Nadu chapter. Nishant has been learning to teach for a few years now, mostly in Marudam, and over the summers at Marfa Foundation in Nepal. His interest in science is balanced by an equal interest in gardening and forests. Purnima and Nishant, thank you for joining us. And now we'll hear from Radha what's next.
Yeah, thanks, Saurav. And thanks again, Poornima and Nishant, for being here with us. So before we start, I thought we'll just give our audience, just a brief overview of the format of the discussion. तो पहले 30 मिनट तो सौरभ और मैं पूर्णिमा और निशांत से प्रश्न पूछेंगे सो विल आस्क देम क्वेश्चंस रिलेटेड टू द आर्टिकल and all of you who've joined us for this webinar, please type your questions in English or Hindi in the chat box. और अगर आप हिंदी में प्रश्न पूछना चाहें तो हमारे ऑथर्स दोनों हिंदी में जवाब दे सकते हैं एंड पर्टिकुलरली निशांत तो बहुत ही कंफर्टेबल है हिंदी में. So then what we will do is we'll choose from these questions and request Poornima and Nishant for their insights on them. That will happen in the later part of the webinar, which is the last 30 minutes or so. So now we'll move forward with our conversation, Saurav.
Yes. So now it is time to ask questions to Nishant and Purnima. So your article outlines an approach to teaching and learning through relationships. And you speak of this as a long, ongoing, collective, and individual journey of understanding, enjoying, and caring at deeper levels. Many teachers may experience this intuitively. Like us, we can may consider it as intuitive. Few may explicitly articulate this or see this as a foundation for their practice. Now, could you elaborate on this principle? Why did you choose this as the foundation for Marudam's work?
I think Purnima, you want to go first, and talk
You'll
about.
tell first, Nishan, then I'll go. Or you
Okay.
want me to go? I think you should go and then I'll go.
Okay, so I think I'll try and elaborate on this phrase, no, that we've written. Very long phrase, long, ongoing, collective, individual journey. This. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think just speaking from a little bit of personal experience, also, I think when we come together to understand, okay, how can we care for our planet better or ecology better, then it's the journey has many layers, I think. So पहले तो ऐसा होता है कि you think organic farming is the best, all birds and animals are here to help us in that, and it's all why don't we just do this very simple good thing. And then you practice, and then you realize there are many complexities. You do face problem with pests, and you have to figure out why. And then you start developing affection for some of the pests itself, and then you meet other people on the similar journey, and you're having these conversations. And I feel like बच्चों का reverse होता है. They are not coming with so many ideas, but they're coming with energy, and so they're doing it, and they're not like, oh, this is so wrong, this is so right. And slowly the teachers maybe are trying to present ideas of, oh, this is what organic is, this is what fertilizers do, this is what people say they do. And so their layers are like more like that. So I kind of imagine it coming together like this. Of course, lots of differences in personal journeys. So that's one thing I feel like happens at Marudam.
And to add to that, I would say that when we think of relationship, I think that itself is so complicated. No, like everybody thinks of it as complicated, right? Whether it's marital relationship or teacher-student relationship or teacher-teacher relationship, student-student relationship, whatever, or like parents-teacher relationship, whatever it is, always it's something very like what do you call that? Usually, it's something you think of hard work in that area, right? In relationship building. But what is forgotten probably is what we were thinking of in Marudam is the relationship we have with the environment around, right? Whether it's animals or the trees or the things that are immediate with us, somewhere in this kind of a lot of energy to even maintain the human relationships. The non human world, are we not connecting or relating? Right? And it we might be, but it needs more awareness and more focus probably. And how to bring that to students. For that, I think it has to begin also by the adults and the children, as Nishant was saying, organically, more like with parents and whatever, who are all the adults and the smaller, younger children involved. It's been it's a nice kind of experience to look at the non-human world as much as we look at human world also. Yeah.
So, Purnima, actually, that takes us to, because you were talking about the non-human world, it's such an important aspect of the work that you do at Maridam, and I think just as human beings and as living beings, actually, isn't it? So, we were just talking about it the other day, that among, like you said, relationships is very central in Maridam. So, among all the relationships that you talked about, you really, towards the end, were beginning to talk about what in your article you say natural landscape and its life forms, right? So, one question that comes to mind is what do you think is fundamentally different in the way children understand and relate to science, right? Through such relationships. So, would you have any, sort of suggestions for teachers in other school settings that may help them, sort of explore this in their schooling contexts? So yeah.
For I would say like जो हम रिश्ता बनाते हैं
हाँ.
उसको हम थोड़ा अलग से देखेंगे तो इसके लिए तो थोड़ा हमको भी सीखना पड़ेगा. So we'll have to learn and probably unlearn. But I would say one example is that, like Nishant was sharing, to let be, very important first. जो फूल है whatever you have around, flowers or insects, or I would call it more like sensitivity, that you're coexisting with someone. And even in a city, you have, like as you were saying the other day, spiders and frogs and lizards, and then you have also trees, shrubs. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि हम अलग से दुनिया में रह रहे हैं, नॉन ह्यूमन वर्ल्ड, हम उनके साथ रह रहे हैं. तो to bring that kind of awareness among children, among the adults, is the beginning, I feel. A sensitivity, and with it some exchange of observations or whatever. Yeah. I think that's very central. So we see that a lot in Marudam, that then what happened, the priorities there, no? You have the sunbirds and they're building a nest in your classroom. You've got the bats flying and building something behind the light. So many things are happening in the night before you come to school.
And so they relate, yeah, and they relate to science in a very different way than through such relationships, right? Right. And like you pointed out about the settings, no, I mean, you gave us some really nice examples for teachers in other contexts also to think about. Like you said, it's not like you're living in some separate place, but that everybody needs to be looking around it. Yeah, that's really that's very, very true. Yeah. Yes.
And in the article, you also tell us that working and learning closely together in such an environment with very little formal structure can be challenging at times. And at the same time, you also mentioned about it is endlessly enthralling, deeply rewarding, and never ever boring, right? Now, in this context, you speak about how building relationship takes times. That takes time. That is, in your previous answer also you have mentioned that is it takes time. Now, in most school, this is a fine balancing act, right? The school is a busy place. Now, can you elaborate your journey, your experience of building relationships and also enriching self?
Is
Nishant?
muted. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so there's I think a lot. मतलब स्कूल का टाइम टेबल बहुत सोच के बनाया जाता है एंड मेरे ख्याल से पूर्णिमा जी उसके बारे में थोड़ा और बात कर सकती हैं क्योंकि वो उसके बारे में और सोचती हैं. मेरे ख्याल से जो दूसरा चीज है कि टाइम टेबल जो भी हो उसके बावजूद अगर कुछ स्पॉन्टेनियसली उस मोमेंट में देना. तो यस, रिसेंटली मैं यही हिमाचल में किसी टीचर से बात कर रहा था और शी वाज सेइंग कि she observed in one school that if the class starts and the teacher tells all the kids to come in, but one kid is playing in the mud because or seen something in the mud like an earthworm or something, then what does it take to say, okay, let the child explore that, and what does it mean to say that nahi 2 baj gaye hain abhi andar aao. So that is the fine balance I think Saurav ji was also talking about. So that is, I think, more cultural, how you practice, how you understand why I mean, if the child can also do something to delay the class. And I mean, as teachers, we constantly see many of these complexities. हाँ.
शांत क्या बोल रहे थे कि उसके लिए स्पेस बनाना, एंड वो स्पेस जो हम लोग क्रिएट करते हैं ना, जो जगह, वो क्लासरूम में इतना बड़ा जगह या हमारे आजू बाजू में इतना बड़ा जगह नहीं, हमारे मन में, इट्स इनसाइड द माइंड. यू क्रिएट दैट स्पेस इनसाइड योर माइंड. Yeah, and so that's what he was saying when Saurav said the long is that, like, that internal change is the mind and the heart and the body of the child, right, in education. तो हमारे अंदर भी वो हम लोग चेंज होते हैं ना जब बहुत, when we experience something very like natural, like when we go have a bath in the river, for example, the chillness, no, there is a beauty of that, right? The whole interface with the nature, like क्यों इतने लोग नहीं तो वाटरफॉल्स में जाके लाइक दे गो फॉर टूरिज्म, क्यों इतने लोग जा रहे हैं ओशंस में, like why do they people like that? It's because like it is moving your mind somewhere, you experience something which is very different from usually like what you do every day. So that space, like as Nishant was mentioning, for a teacher or an adult or even for peers to allow someone when they're observing to be, तो ये क्या है ना कि उनको प्रेशराइज मत करो, जैसे कि अगर वो अर्थवर्म देख रहे हैं तो देखने दो, देर ऑब्जर्विंग, लेट इट बी, एंड इफ लेट्स से 10 minutes गैप हो गया, they will come back and catch. You can ask the other children, oh, you've missed something, can you copy down? Or, like there is a facilitation possible, you know. We do that a lot in Marudam. And also I want to share that like when Saurav was asking about like the, and Nishant was talking about timetable, जो हम टाइम टेबल बनाते हैं उसमें हम लोग क्या बोलते हैं कि अरे 6 or 7 periods of math, then you have 6 or 7 periods of science, and then you have 1 or 2 periods of language, and then one somewhere in the corner you'll have social studies, 1 or 2, like उसमें the problem is that the children very much understand what your focus is on. So any teacher or an organization or an institution, सबको ये मालूम है कि उनका जो प्रायोरिटी है किस में है. तो ये नहीं बोल रही हूँ कि सब में मीन देयर हैज टू बी डिफरेंस इन सब स्कूल्स में आपको बदलना चाहिए, ऐसा नहीं बोल रही हूँ, लेकिन कैन यू ट्राई फॉर अ बैलेंस अगर, एंड दैट्स वेरी मच इन Marudam, like what we do is we have a balance of different experiences and give that full time for those experiences. Like you have 3 hours, let's say a nature walk. Nature walk doesn't mean you have to only walk in a forest. Your engagement with nature, and let's say you have 3 hours, तो उसको compromise मत करो. Don't compromise with maths exam, नहीं तो कुछ और या कुछ और, allow that space, and that leads to a deeper understanding. One more thing, as you said, जो परेशानी होती है ना, like Saurav, हमारे experience में nature is not always beautiful, no, you have thorns. Many times children get pricked with thorns, they get itchy. ऐसा हो सकता है. ऐसा नहीं कि हमेशा ही like it will be beautiful like that. No, you experience something very different, and that is also important, as he said, for long-term relationship building. Give that space, time, not rush.
Well, it's so wonderful. I think probably Radha also was so happy hearing your points.
Very true. Very
Is
true.
it so? The major, I think, the breaking the boundary, whatever you are saying, it is a space. The physical space is not the restriction, but restriction is somewhere else that makes that allows us to see something open or limited. So it's so interesting in a way. And you also mentioned one thing. I'm not able to resist myself pointing it out again. What you are saying that it is, you are saying that the nature is a reality. It does not give you happiness all the time. So
Doesn't.
the
Why would it?
right, this is the reality of the world. It comes with a flower and a thorn together. So I think that is the, so okay. So in that connection, as you are saying that how you are you are giving time to the to for nature work, that you don't compromise. It naturally connects us. That it seems to me that your environment is highly collaborative. The teachers are collaborative. Teaching is happening in collaboration, and so I want to know that what kind of collaborative experiences you give to in teaching and learning.
I can say one thing which I did when I enjoyed with Nishant a lot, you know, which comes to my mind many times, is that we were going walking up the mountain, and I was with the children, and Nishant was ahead, and he said, "Akka, just a minute," And I thought, okay, wow, something. And then he said, look, look at the langurs and look at the way they're going after the termites, no? So, like, I remember that moment. There are many moments like that, right? Joyous moments with different people in teaching. Like, in a sense, not to take for granted langurs' lives. We would have seen those langurs so many times. And I remember Nishant pointing out that we don't know what they're eating. It's so interesting to even study a langur. For us, it seems like, okay, langur are coming many times. We've seen it many times. But what do you know about it? So, like that, I'm saying from each of the teachers, I think for teachers who've not had an experience with nature, and there are other teachers who have a lot of experiences with nature because they've chosen to be, we engage and make sure that, like, people who've not had many experiences get a chance, first of all, with teachers who are having experiences. And it's not like, it's more like sharing. It's not like we try not to be like hierarchical in the sense, okay, I know more and this person knows less. At least there's an attempt. And the other thing is that more important is that we're co-learners with the children. Yeah, children are all the time observing, as he said. No, they don't come with right, wrong, and all. They just ask you questions, and that collaboratively, the teachers, we are co-learners. So I don't think like we can ever say, oh, the child knows less than me, or I know more than the child in this area. Like, and the teachers also, we cannot say we might know more. We might have, it's based more on interest. Yeah, I got that. Yeah, more like if you're interested, then you learn more. Yeah.
Nishant, would you like to add?
Yeah.
Yes. Um, I think sometimes we all feel that we don't have enough time to learn from each other, because actually when you walk past each other's classroom or some session, तो कभी देखने को मिलता है कि कोई नया ही गेम चालू है, जिम्नास्टिक्स और and really you want to know कि क्या है ये, but you have your own class. तो काफी time then this leads to conversation, and kabhi I think, and especially Poornima always encourages teachers to pair up, different teachers to pair up, complementing things. So some people who are good with their hands. I remember Uma and Senthil did that sundial class, because Senthil is someone who is like, very engineering kind of mind. He can help make it. And Uma was teaching her kids about seasons and how the sun moves and why that. So, they just got together and did that. So, वो भी उसमें भी बहुत मजा आता है to like catch each other and say, can you do this for me? Can we do this together? And really believing कि all the teachers have something quite exciting that they know, that the way they practice teaching, the things that they learn in the class. And so it's a very intimate sharing. Oh, to see somebody else's class and to learn from it. So that is really a good spirit of collaboration. Yeah.
Right, right. We have started getting questions from the audience, but here I will pick some of the questions which will be very relevant and also that will channelize our discussion. For example, there is a member. He say Ropal Jena says that he is curious to he or she know he wants or she wants to know about the curriculum in Marudam Farm School, how it look like. And here, I believe that the kind of discussion will continue. This will give a glimpse of uh, how the curriculum is. So I'm connecting the question with the previous one. And when you talk about the building relationship with nature, you talk about the collaboration. This entire journey is about building relationships of nature, relationship among human, and with the system and process also. And if we go like that, I think then our immediate question also will be that what kind of uh, nature of science we actually visualize or what we think about. If the our view of science will probably dictate the way we want to learn science and we want to teach science. And you have mentioned in your article there are multiple perspectives of looking at science, right? And the way science is, many of us have taught in the school level, the definition of science. And the definition of science seems to be a one definition of science. And then there is a systematic body of knowledge. This is science. And then you say that science is mastery over nature. That is, if you know science, then you can master over the nature. So these kind of ideas are there. At the same time, you have mentioned about multiple perspective. And there is a question also came from a audience. Archana says that the understanding, the perspective, yeah, all these questions seems, the way we are looking at science and teaching learning, it seems to be in not in alignment with the dominant views of parents. Parents don't, many of the parents, as per her experience, are not in alignment with the views we want to present. So, how do you reconcile these ideas? And Purnima or Nishant, whoever wants to go ahead, you can.
I, Nishant, I thought I'll do the parents bit, and if you can
I
do
think
the
so.
whole the science bit of the, that is something very passionate for you. So I
Yeah.
really think. So if you can do the first science bit, like, yeah.
Let's see. I think now I'm unmuted. Yeah. So there were many questions in there. एक तो, what is science? One is about curriculum and uh, kind of how we learn things. So there is a, I think there is like a best version of science and worst version of science. So I think in the best version, what we are trying to inculcate is like a sharpness of observation, understanding, the ability to question anything, but in a productive way. And the worst of science is like this is a huge body of facts that you must know because people who are very intelligent have proved it. And so we see both of this very much in every day, in schools, in the way people talk, in the way people say ki, this science has said that this is like this, why are you arguing, you hear it in every day. So I think that reconciliation has to be that you have to kind of, I think, take a step back from that huge body of knowledge because it's infinite. मतलब कितना ही कुछ सीखते जाओगे, पानी के ऊपर इतना सारा रिसर्च है, तुम just learning about water you can spend a lifetime. That's why people do PhDs and whatnot, right? But so stepping back from that and just trying to see um, how we learn things and making space for that, then what happens, I feel like if you have like a general body of skills ki you can look at something and ask questions and get interested and कि मैं इसको इसके बारे में पूछ सकता हूँ और ये टीचर को इसके बारे में पता है, and you are good at like getting people to answer your questions and looking it up, maybe going to the library. These are skills, and if we do this right in the foundation years, then hopefully they are able to tackle something like a huge syllabus and a huge exam curriculum. But frankly, matlab, if I say almost all curriculums are they ask too much. They ask too much of children to know in a specific way. And so I think it's you have to make a balance. I mean, finally you have to also give exams, and many parents want that, and also that's the only way that the system recognizes that you have gone to school. So we, I think in practice क्या होता है कि we dedicate some time to really preparing for exams that is closer to the exam, and the rest of the time we are really trying to build good learning. And it's true, it can get quite challenging. Yeah, I think Purnima will say more about parents. Yeah.
तो आप बोल रहे थे कि करिकुलम और जो पेरेंट्स का जो डिफिकल्टीज है, तो हम क्यों पेरेंट्स को लाइक वी अलग से देख रहे हैं? वी आर आल्सो पेरेंट्स एट सम टाइम, एटलीस्ट आई एम अ पेरेंट श्योरली as much as I'm a teacher. I also feel like somehow are we also convinced about when we're doing things, like as teachers and in a school? So the first question would be, Marudam, like, it's not like everybody is in disagreement with parents. Like as Nishant was saying, like when it comes to like, are we doing enough by, the future, like exams, are they preparing well? Are they going to do? There's a lot of anxiety in many areas for parents, right? And as I rightly said by Archana, there are expectations, right? Now the question here is that would be always there. Are we not even in the mainstream? Do you think parents are happy? Do you think like even in a mainstream school, the amount of complaints probably you would be receiving would be lots more? I think like syllabus not completed, my child is slow, my child is fast. Is the same in an alternate world? Is that there is an insecurity because there's a lot of unknown, right, for the parents, and you don't know, like when you're going like in like let's say like you see a cobra in our school, Marudam, it happens many times. There's cobra, there's crate, there are also the poisonous snakes there. It's an assumption that in your mainstream school you don't have a cobra or a crate. It's not like you don't, it's just because you don't see them doesn't mean that they don't exist, right? So what I'm saying is that like when Nishant is saying that sharpness of observation, right, leaves parents definitely with some anxiety and expectations. But like how like Saurav was saying, there is a collaborative effort among teachers and students. Same we have to try with parents. It's more tough. I'm not saying it's easy, but the collaborative, like we should encourage them also to do some science with us sometimes, like at least the interested parents. You could also like invite them to have a little bit of nature, like interfaces. We've done that, it's worked a lot for us. Not all the parents, but at least like if parents, we can always invite them. Like you can send a note and say, we're doing this, would you like to join? Not treat parents as somebody who are, what do you call it, fault finders. Yeah, that's very important, I think.
Purnima, because it's wonderful how you keep bringing it back to the issue of relationships. I mean, it comes back to, if we see all these as relationships, then we see them differently, right? So, here I wanted to come back to what Nishant was talking about, observations, and then you also sort of referred to it. So, one of the things, of course, if we were to look at this whole process of science, right? So, very much a part of your learning approach, the careful observations, questioning, discussions, debates, both, with everybody as learners, teachers, students, everybody's learning together, right? So now here there's another, so as part of the scientific process, there are other aspects, right, that we sort of put down when we say process of science, or the way we understand the process of science. Designing sort of investigations, doing the experiments, then setting up, designing the experiments, doing the experiments, then analyzing them. How do you draw inferences from them? So that as children or as learners, you are sort of engaging more deeply with the question. So how is that done at Marudam, and what's your experience with these aspects as well? Because these are such typical aspects of the process of science in any classroom and in any situation. Yeah. So either of you, Nishant or Purnima.
I think Purnima, you say first.
Yeah, I can. So, like, in the sense that, and like Nishant, if I've missed something, just add on, like, in terms of articulation. Yeah. So, I would say, like, how we do it is that for very young children, like, let's say kindergarten, I don't think it's so much directed, right? We know that age, and so like the experience of just being outdoors a little bit, combined with how they play inside, and very important. And if they share something, to listen to it carefully. So the adult is more like a facilitator listening. And how we've done for like the primary schools is that giving opportunities where even the small shrubs or inside the classroom some things are happening, bringing to them through little bit of projects where you take a particular thing on insects, things that are very small, not like lion and tiger, and every time we're like, oh, is it like, you know, it's always like really like bringing them more to the focus of smaller, aspects which are very nuanced in nature. Is so joyful for children. Yeah. And I think like how much they enjoy looking at insects, the variety, the beautiful, like the world, so much they learn, right? Within a classroom. I'm not even saying you have to go outside. You see so much within. The same way, I think when they're grade five, like that kind of age, I'm thinking like what worked very well is also like talking about the whole aspect of evolution, like how Earth has come, how did it happen? I'm so curious about life, the beauty of life itself, you know. So like that, like if you go to the middle group, there could be something more like as a curriculum, slowly increasing a complexity of the same observations that you have in primary, but more and more and more you're learning, right? More and more you're observing, more and more you're learning. And then when you're coming to high school, there's much more tangible of relationships, no, like how everything is interconnected, so many things. So I don't know, I see that it sounds very graded, but I don't mean it is graded, it's more like that the mind and the body of someone who's observing has to be strengthened and supported through also a little bit of intellectual input along with observations.
Right. Yeah, it's a nuanced and I mean, I always think of that ladder, that sort of you just keep slowly moving up on that ladder by adding another rung and another rung and another rung.
Yeah. And in
Yeah,
fact, actually, also some of the textbooks, I wouldn't
yeah,
say textbooks, and some parts of very sensitively done books for children have
yes,
done that. I don't
that's
think
right.
we have to reinvent it. It's
Yeah,
there. We must just look for it.
correct. Absolutely. Yeah. Nishant, did you want to add something there?
Definitely, I'm always tempted to add things.
Of
Uh,
course.
I I think what Poornima was saying was really nice because it's true. Like the same thing, coming back to it again and again brings something really good. And what you were saying about the ladder, I also think sometimes there is like a spiral because you're around the same center, but your circle's getting bigger and bigger, and you're connecting more things. And I think in your question, I also saw that you were specifically wanting to know about experimental design, and when I think about it, I think even in the later years when it comes, I think in my observation, children are much better at modifying experimental setup than coming up with it from scratch. Definitely, I mean, coming up with a new design is something. As a scientist, it's a very fun thing to do, but I think that still comes at a later stage. And in fact, in my school, experiments are fully decided. Even the results are decided. कि ऐसा ऐसा करो, फिर ऐसा ऐसा दिखेगा, फिर ऐसा ऐसा लिखोगे, है ना? तो उसमें the fun thing that we can do is write something else and then see, like allow for other. I remember we used to go to the biology lab and look in the microscope, and the teacher will say कि अभी तुमको ऐसा दिखेगा, एक अमीबा बीच में, उसका शेप ऐसा होगा, उसको ड्रॉ करो. And whole class did it, okay, including me. And later the lab technician came and said, "Ma'am, ये microscope तो focused ही नहीं है." So so what did the kids see? What did they draw? We all do what is there in the textbook because we know that that's what we're supposed to see. So, genuine, like if we can take even one experiment and really go have fun with it. Like I remember when I was doing with two students for the 12th class, एक experiment है rice starch. So you have to take test tubes, and we took some rice kanji, and we organized the test tube. Then we put the spit in and different dilutions, and you see how it changes color with iodine. A standard experiment. But one of the kids, he was so interested in knowing if different people's spits have different power. So he was convinced ki, like, and it's also something to brag about. My spit, it digested the starch so fast.
Yeah.
So he went around different age groups collecting spit, just, and you can think that it's mad, but actually it's such a good experiment. Na? He's going and actually,
Yeah.
and all the kids that he's asking are also getting excited. Why are you taking my
Right.
spit? So they're
Right.
running behind him. Then he's, so it's little bit, over the top, dramatic, but it's fun. And I think that kind of thing kids are very good at. Ye kyun kar rahe? Why can't we do it like this? Like change
Yeah.
one piece. So that, yeah.
Yeah, but that's truly also a bit about designing an experiment in a sense as a scientist. I mean, you sort of, because a lot of times in schools they're demonstrating something, right? They're not truly doing
Hmm.
it in that sense, no?
But I
And
also feel rather just to add, I
yeah,
think it's very
yeah,
good point that Nishant said. I just want
yeah.
to like add one more. Even like the what do you call the conditions for the experiment.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't think we define it very well for children.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
there is a long way to go in
Hmm.
what are the conditions
Hmm.
required for a particular result.
Hmm.
We're very much result
Uh,
oriented rather than the process.
hmm.
Hmm.
Which also, and I'm going to divert slightly here because which also means that you don't understand that there is a certain definition of an experiment being successful versus an
Hmm.
experiment not working, right?
Yeah.
So you're always aiming for a certain result, which cuts out curiosity and questioning, no? Because
Beautiful, beautiful.
you're observing the what has actually happened, because sometimes magic happens, right? I mean, there's an emergence also that happens in an experiment if you're going into it open, sort of in a sense open minded, no? You're not sort of already in your head there is a result, no, in a sense it. So here
True.
yeah, sorry, yeah, sorry, you were saying yes.
No, no, I'm just saying it's
Yeah,
true.
very. So one thing both of you, have described in different ways, and particularly Purnima, you sort of went into that. You know what in the article you talk about the different approaches to engaging with science. You were just talking about how with smaller children, how it's done, and then you go further up. So you call it the ground up approach versus the top down, sort of an approach, and like you pointed out, many times sort of textbooks are also designed like that, right? So there is like there's a when they are in primary school to versus middle school, and then after that there is more abstraction when they go further up. So in the way you what is different about your approach as it emerges from the paper is that emphasis that you put on connecting these things with their lived experiences to enrich relationships. So that's a very important emphasis that you point out. And somewhere else also in the article you talk about, we shouldn't be dumping concepts before there is a foundation of experience. So could you talk a little bit more about that from your experience of this whole experience of
So, yeah, I can
mm,
connect rather.
yeah.
It's like if we take a person who is not experienced that kind of a relationship probably with the living beings or the non-human world, let's say, and the child comes new. It is also like a child who's not had parents who are literate might have a very good view of non-human world would have experienced but has not able to articulate it in the class because not able to read the textbook probably, you you understand, like there are two kinds of like children. I'm just taking for example, I'm sure there are many children in between. Now, both have a learning opportunity there. And how do we create that opportunity? Let's say in a middle school, the opportunity is created for both of them to have a real life experience. Let's say just looking at an insect just outside your classroom for, like, let's say 2 3 minutes, observing. That's an experience which is combined, right? And then after that is there, you come back with wherever your levels are. For someone, that what does that insect really mean? It could be what it ate or what it does. And for someone else, it's just observing the structure of the insect. For someone, it's where is that insect? Where was it? You know? So that real life experience is very uniform to whatever background or whatever knowledge they had or not knowledge they had, doesn't matter. That they are introduced to that. The discussion after that is where you actually like handle the levels of children. So the learning opportunity is very similar. And consolidation you have to do with, as he said, like it could also be library books, reference books, it could be writing that you have had, or
That's right.
I don't know if that's, yeah.
No, no, absolutely. Wow. I mean, that last bit which you explained really sort of, like we say, the purpose of the webinar is to go beyond the article. And I think here it's really gone beyond and given us some depth there, that experience being, I mean, both are watching the insect, both are observing the insect, but then how does their context allow them to relate to that observation?
Yes.
Lovely. Thank you for that, Poornima. Yeah. Nishant, I'm going to ask you again if you
I
have
think
anything to add.
I'll pass. I
You
like
pass this one.
I like
Okay,
that.
great. Okay, okay. Nice way to.
Right. So, when you actually, the way you are presenting things, and you have also mentioned about the two approaches, I had certain questions in my mind. I think still I have, you have given answers. Still, I'm just putting them in a more emphasis, with more emphasis. First one is, as it appears that ground up approach would be time consuming for many of us, right? We can think that ground up approach is time consuming. And at the same time, it is also about what you value. For example, if you are only value, if you want to be a consumer of knowledge all the time, then you are looking for the answers, right? You want a prescription and you want to follow. So are we? So what kind of time is required to make someone consumer? What will be the outcome after that? What will be the profit of? What are the advantage of getting consumers? And what kind of time invested for making the knowledge creators, or maybe the people who are in the culture of science? And what will be the advantage? I think that will give us the real sense of what is time consuming and what is not. Do you think that would you is it the way to look at things, the how we balance the how we measure the time, amount of time used, and what we are getting out of it?
I think very beautifully put, uh, to think of this kind of consumer versus knowledge creator, because it's also a question of confidence. When you keep telling people to consume, then their confidence also goes down. Then even later when they get time, are they going to be able to create something new? Yeah, I didn't sense much of a question there. I think it was very nicely put.
For me, like Saurav, it will be like to keep a child's curiosity alive. You don't need time. You just support it. Already children are curious. Just don't kill it.
Right, right. So don't put any effort. That is the point. So just
Don't
allow
end
things to be.
don't end the curiosity and inquisitiveness which is naturally there.
Right. Right. I completely agree to that. So I think most of the time we put energy unnecessarily to stop the natural flow, right?
Yes.
Here and there, we can just allow things to flow. And you have mentioned in your article that you are exposing middle school children to bits of the larger body of existing scientific knowledge. And I think this is what you are explaining over the time, that you are spiraling, the kind of spiraling Nishant was referring to, and Purnima was talking about the developing the skills that will help us in at a deeper and deeper level in higher stage. Still, would you like to add to it with a specific example that how an observation at an early stage can help?
I think one thing that comes to mind is the thing of, you have concepts that can actually help a child's learning journey. So how you were saying nicely, like, you don't want to stop the flow. Purnima was saying there's already curiosity, so there is a flow to a child's learning, and to think of what concept will help them go deeper or go further at that point. So, you see some children are very into repairing their cycles. Puncture always happens, so they'll sit and do it. Now, to a child like that, if you perhaps talk about how a gear works, why is a gear there, you talk about maybe even air pressure, these are things that will immediately he'll enjoy, because it might actually, he or she will enjoy, because she'll then start seeing that, oh yeah, then I can look at this even more deeply. And so I think that I forgot I forgot Saurav's question, but this is what came to my mind.
In the spiral, sort of, I think like where I see Nishant's question related to what I would answer is the whole role of an adult or a facilitator or a teacher is to recognize the interest and the level of the child, like to recognize, you know and from there you can build a spiral. Like I'll tell you an example, which always in the textbooks, like everywhere in the middle school, if you see from 6 to 8, like if you take body system, they'll say digestive system, respiratory system, circulatory system, and all those systems, and then keep on revisiting digestive system every time, and probably add a little bit of glands more and more like that. But never have you presented a body as a whole, right? So unless in the beginning you present the body and their function as a whole, I'm saying it could be like in whatever, I mean, it's the animals that you see around, or it could be your own body, I don't know, whatever. Then if you like really go into those bits and pieces of what each of the systems and how do they collaborate with other systems, very, very important. It's not like the digestive system by itself exists on its own. How can it? So foolish to treat. Really, I feel so actually like I can see my body responding. How can you
Yeah.
like,
This
and
actually reminds me of sorry to interrupt, but this reminds me of this one situation where we had just done one chapter like this, some system of the body, and then me and the student were walking, and we came across another person who was cleaning a chicken. And when we saw the body, there was nothing neat about it. You couldn't tell where the digestive system starts, where which system intersects. And the student looked at me and he said, Anna, so where is the stomach? I was like, I'm stumped. We'll just ask this person who does this very regularly. And so yeah, I mean, that was something very real.
many people keep saying babies are born from stomach. It's not true. Babies are not born from stomach. Why do we give wrong information? But what I'm going to say is I don't want to go too much in detail, but the spiraling should begin, let's say for a class, it could begin from what you think is important for the class. Like let's say body, you're learning about body, you're also learning about animals and their body systems. Then it could also be like how different systems are interacting with each other. It could be any beginning, but bring as much as real sense to that through questions. So one very nice thing example is like first I would gather all the questions the children have in a particular topic and write on the board, right? That I found that very fascinating. And don't restrict the children's question. Like don't like कभी भी हम ऐसे उनके जो प्रश्न है उनको अभी हमको आदर करना चाहिए. ये इम्पोर्टेंट है, ये इम्पोर्टेंट नहीं है, ये टॉपिक में नहीं है, ऐसा हम बोल नहीं सकते. जो है उनके दिमाग में, जो उनका इंटरेस्ट है, उससे उनका प्रश्न है. उसके बाद जब all the things are written on the board, you categorize, help them categorize and see like, okay, what are the questions are there in this group? What are the questions in this group and this group? And let's see how much can I answer in this class. We will take up other questions later. Something like that. Very important for middle school.
A true democratic classroom should not have censorship.
Seriously? Well said, Saurav. Well said.
Because he's talking about consumerism, even censorship. I don't think you should. Because one child, हमारे जो हमारी क्लास में है, अभी मेरे जो censorship मुझे इतना पसंद आया वो आपका जो word, क्योंकि वो हमेशा abortion, child delivery की बात कर पूरा समय 10 साल के और 11 साल के लोग बच्चे उनका उनके दिमाग में है वो.
Yeah, very, very true.
Not
Yes.
good or bad. It's just there. So you
It's
have
just
to address
there.
those questions.
Very true, very, very true. So, as we are talking about, a lot of the conversation now is coming towards this whole issue of, interconnections and connections, right? But here, I'm wondering whether before we go into this, there is a very interesting question from Ranjit Dash who asks that social expectations and peer group dynamics are quite powerful for many children. And I'm bringing this question up here because we've just talked about democracy in a classroom, and so Ranjit says that there is a fear of losing independent thinking, observation in through this whole peer group dynamics. So how do you engage with such issues in Marudam? That's a question from Ranjit. Yeah.
Amazing.
So any of you.
Thank you, Ranjit. That was I feel I understand the question, but I'll be happy for somebody to try and explain the question a bit more. Do you think you have the sense?
I don't know what I understand. I can try, and probably I understand the question is that he's asking that sometimes among the peer interactions, you have like very very good fast learners and slower learners, and like they're also constantly comparing with each other, and then also the teachers approve of certain probably interactions and not certain. I don't know the social setup in a classroom. Does it facilitate different kinds of thinking and observations, or does it curb just by fear of okay I will be disapproved?
Yes.
Or this will be more recognized than something else. I understand the question as that, but I don't know. Is that okay, Ranjit? Just say yes if you've understood, Ranjit.
You can tell us that. But I think based on your interpretation, I think it's useful to sort of just share your. I think that's also my take from it. Yeah.
That's what he wants.
Yeah.
And just a point, I think, just one point I want to add to that, what Ranjit has said. I think it is more about when you keep things open, when you allow people to work independently. That is actually you are putting people in uncertainty because there is no one to, you don't know what is correct. And so that's why you have a fear of losing. Certain failure is more accepted than uncertain success. And that is the way people's mind work. So I think probably, anyway, but Ranjit can say, yeah.
Yeah, very true. So,
I would, if you want me to answer how we handle it in Marudam, quickly
yeah,
I can
go
do it.
ahead. Please, Poornima.
How
That
we
would be
answer
nice.
this is basically not to end if children get rotation of chances in the class to ask questions. And the answers, if there are children who answer quickly, just ask them to wait a bit. This kind of thing, interaction with the children. And you can also ask them to write the questions in their notebooks. Don't have to be verbal always, so that you give them chances. And so equally, the teacher gives importance to people who are a little bit shy, inhibited, and also like you can have through drawings. Not everybody can express through writing. So allow for different expressions, and I've had some beautiful expressions by children through writing as well as drawings, not only verbal. And so then you give that independent thinking chances. Not everybody is able to say it openly in the class. Then you are addressing that. And the other way to do it also is that to bring up a topic again and again and again and again, and make sure that everybody has had a turn to express what they felt about that topic.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
I think one more thing to add is what this giving chance in expression, and then giving chance in leading also.
Yeah.
So, let them kind of lead a session. If suppose we're talking about insects, and some child, from experience that they spend a lot of time seeing where they are. So ask that child to take everybody there and show. And the child who maybe perhaps is quicker to understand bookish concepts will have their space in class. But to create the other space where the other child can lead, and leading always helps, I think.
So the different forms of expression and leading, yeah, different forms of expression can be very powerful. And also another thing, I think, Poornima, you were earlier talking also about where children start from, no? That when they come with different levels, and although they have the same real world experience of that insect example you gave us, right? So in a sense, when they come back and they're able to express it differently, there's a certain richness of learning for everybody from such
Sharing.
a situation, isn't it? So here, when we're talking about, we've talked so much about science, etc., and the time that's required for sort of really exploring in a different way. One of the things that your article really sort of talks about very well is this. Think about the endless interdisciplinary interconnections, between various concepts, right? So now, many people may suggest that this is probably a better way to introduce science, right? At least at the middle school level, bringing these interconnections. Um, and you also and you point out that the ways in which children may respond to this approach can also vary. Like you say very clearly in that some may take to science and others may disconnect from it, right? So, could you share some of your experiences in recognizing these differences?
Yeah, I think, Poornima, do you want to say anything?
I would say like I, I mean examples or just going into it. I'm a little bit like thinking about it.
Okay.
What would suit people? You want more example, or like would we
An
just go into?
example would be helpful, I think, for people to understand, and then other experiences. Yeah. So, an example helps, I think, to sort of show the
So
difference.
an example of how do we enter the levels? Is that
How
what?
do you how do you sort of see this? Like this particular thing where you say some may take to science and others may disconnect from it, even though the approach is the same of
So,
interconnections.
yeah. So this interdisciplinary as well as like inside the class. Okay. I would say for students, let's say you're saying something and somebody is not connecting to that. It could be an experiment, or like we've done that many times. We try to make clouds inside the class in an experiment in a jar. Or and then you see some children are completely lost. They're not even interested. They're not connecting. No, not much motivation to answer. And then some children are. Then you have an experience where we're trying to make something with Darwin Gupta toys. Kuti kuti like
Oh, right,
pumps.
right, right,
Like
right.
very easy pumps with and then you've got also this whole how a seed has grown. Nature observation kind of thing, and what's there on a leaf. Can you just observe the leaf itself and see what is a world on just a single leaf on a tree? just outside your classroom.
Mm.
You could have an activity which is designed,
Mm.
but some, as you said, will take to it and some not. Now, one has to find out why are the children not engaging? Is it because they've not understood, or is it because they're not connected to it? Right?
Mm.
And I would say
Mhm.
that very important is that we, in terms of expression, we write down things like either on a common display
Mm.
and make each person's contribution important. Let's say you have 40 children in the class, you know, make sure that each of them in smaller groups are able to first express or articulate what they have seen.
Mm.
I'm just saying an example like, what did you see? Then some people will say what they saw. Some others would have not seen at all, but because they have said, they revisit and then get curious again. Like, so always try to be inclusive in the classroom. Don't come to a conclusion that the children have not, they're disinterested.
Mm.
Not necessarily to go there, but to
Mm.
be constantly trying. For that,
Right.
what's very important is to read help sometimes. So the next
Mm.
class to go in with reading,
Mm.
some children might get motivated. Again, next class you try to do some practicals, some other children might get connected. So how basically like keep trying in order that your what we are offering
Mm.
reaches many kinds of children and levels.
Mm. Mm.
And one more thing is in evaluation, I would say for my experience in science is, let's say, what did you observe? If you just ask a question like that, it's very broad. Children will say anything.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
observe this, we observe that taka, we observe this, everything. They will
Right.
come with 1,000 observations.
Right. Right.
Now,
Right. Right.
what did you intend? No, like you also have to like really like it's not direction, but you'll have to tell openly what do you want out of that activity.
Mm. Mm.
And then you say, okay, can we try to observe this today?
Mm. Mm.
Right? More like an invitation.
Right.
Yeah. So
But
that
also,
works a lot.
and here, no, you had another dimension to this was that overwhelming. So, for instance, you had that. Do you remember? I mean, in the article you had written about cellular respiration and then the role of chemical interactions, bonding, which then leads you to connects you to atoms and molecules, and then from there it goes further and further and further, and then you have this web of concepts. So and so it's there in that context you were saying some children then will just take to that they see that as quite fascinating the way it connects to so at so many levels and the way all of these are actually connected, right? And for others it may be that it's this web that I have to understand, right?
Yeah,
So
I
in
think
that sense
it
also
then
it
for the others, like people can see one thing, and then I think that's it comes back to one example that I was talking about, the microscope, where everyone claimed to have seen the cell, right? So let's say some child didn't see the cell, and everyone said they saw it, and then you spend the next month doing cell biology.
right.
You will observe a disconnection in the child also, because they had to swallow something that they didn't see. And
Mm-hmm.
so those kind of, so a lot of times when we start with a subject with a child, we don't know the history of those interconnected concepts. So you have to, like Poornima was saying, you have to kind of explore why the child is disconnected, or like at what level did it happen. It can also be not so logical, but just kind of a block that they feel about a certain topic. And but I think the whole point of that interconnected web is to be careful that nobody gets excluded, because it can go on. Like somebody who gets DNA will then get cell biology, will get genetics, will start understanding the other things that are introduced in class 12th. But somebody who didn't, I think that happened to me in maths, because it understand what a function is. So I suffered for the next 4 years, because everything is to do with that. You have differentiation, integration, all these things keep piling, and I just dread that time. I'll be like, oh shit, there's going to be a class about that thing that I don't understand again.
Oh, right. Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But rather, I'll tell you a quick one more.
Yeah.
Just
Please,
it's so
please.
interesting this topic, but I don't know so many questions. You will have to keep a track of that.
Don't
Yes,
worry.
sir. So, like I'm saying that when you said something that burst of interconnectedness,
Yes.
it's so interesting.
Yes.
So, in the science classes or any other class, it would be nice to allow for those interconnectedness to express itself, right?
Ah.
For example, I'll tell you, like
Mm.
when we did evolution, many people have a misconception that evolution should be introduced very late.
Mm. Mm.
I have
Mm.
seen children in 7 and 8, they
Mm.
understand life. So
Mm.
when you experience a story of Earth, you do such a
Mm.
solid like a story, and you have
Mm.
this 4 billion years, and you have this rope.
Mm. Right.
So fascinating. And
Wow.
then I had this 8-year-old child. I still remember. And they were, Akka, when did the life come? When did the butterfly come? When did the trees come? Are you Akka? Like that, they went on asking so many questions. And the
Ah.
end, like I was tagging every event, right? Like in the thread,
Right,
tagging
right, right.
all their events. And then I
Right, right.
came, okay, this is when the humans came.
Yeah. That's right.
And
That's
it was
right.
somewhere in the end of the rope. So the
Yeah.
child then asks me,
Right.
Akka, where am I? Because they're 8.
Right.
I don't know where to tag you.
That's right. No, no, absolutely. Yes,
You
yes,
know,
yes,
like,
yes.
so, like I would say, you never know through a particular open ended activity.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
There will be interconnectedness. There
Mm.
will
Mm.
be that they have read something about atoms and molecules. They might have read something about like dinosaur getting extinct. They might have
Mm.
seen so much from the visual media, from the TV, from all kinds of sources now, YouTubes, and so much of
Mm.
information.
Mm.
But where do you place that information?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you
That's right.
place all that information?
That's
How
right.
is it
That's
even
right.
relevant?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you. That was really, yeah. I think Saurav, we can move on to the question about we were
Yes,
talking about
yes.
syllabus organizing and all that. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was thinking that actually many of the kind of things you have elaborated, yeah, and
Yeah.
you have absolutely elaborated like, and you have mentioned that there is a scope of looking at the central concept and organizing the syllabus, right? Organizing the curriculum in a way that gives the meaning also, and also it helps to give a natural connection in syllabus. And how do you do it in Marudam? This is one. And I would like to also mention one question that is asked by the participant, Tanvi. Tanvi says, how does science experience looks like in kindergarten? And when an open-ended experience is provided, what is aftermath of it? Is there a lot of deliberation that children need to observe, share observation, ask questions? If yes, how those conversations are held? What shape do these conversations take? So this is what she is talking about kindergarten, but I think here also we'll find the organizing structure of the activities, right? That will eventually lead to a better concept, holistic understanding.
Purnima, if you
Yes.
want to answer that
So
question that's
therefore,
more
yeah,
directed to
and
kindergarten,
then
yeah.
you can also think, I'm sure, like about some Nishant, like things that we have also observed, no? Like
Yeah.
so, I would say like for kindergarten as well as like generally to create an observation corner is beautiful. You know, it could be like the children have collected things and put it there in a day. What are the things that they saw? What do they find it interesting? Yeah. And we've done that in Marudam a lot. Like you have these observation corners, as in not as in like design corners, but there's a value for what they collect and bring. But we can't accumulate it too much over a week. But then you can, what I'm saying is you'll have so much in those baskets. And then, like, it's not like show and tell, oh, this I found here. No. Like you discuss about what they found. Was it belonging to a dead tree? Where did you find it? How did you find it? What did you find interesting about it? And there is a recognition of what they collected. And in kindergarten, children love collecting. I think they they're the best collectors. I think actually, we whenever we collect seeds, I think the kindergarten children collect the best. No wonder there's so much child labor. So I'm really saying they're so good at collecting detailed things, like small, minute things, because their observations are sensorially and sharp. Right. So first you do the collections, come there, and then what's happening is also you can categorize it. Like, oh wow, look at all these seeds, put them together. Like, sometimes we try. I'm not saying you have to immediately make it a science class, but it's nice. Like, you can look at patterns sometimes. Hey, look at this flower, see how beautiful they are, look at the colors. Once one you can do that. My favorite in kindergarten has been from you grade the colors like light yellow to dark yellow, all the things you found from flowers and parks and trees and whatever you find. Even chocolate wrappers can be in between. Doesn't matter. It's so fascinating, that kind of corners that you can create in kindergarten. Yeah.
It's just wonderful.
Nishant.
Yeah.
I think I'll try to pick up on that thing of syllabus that you're also asking before. Uh, I think one organizing thing is that was the whole title of the article, no, place based. And so I was thinking about it a little more, and no matter where one is. So, for example, for us, it's these yeris are a big thing. Coconut leaf weaving is a big thing. Pottery is there. For someone else in a city, maybe in Chennai, for example, there is the ocean. So anything you teach, from the ocean, how many things can you teach? And so it's not about organizing the syllabus how we've done it here. Everyone should do it somewhere, something like that. Everyone can just see what are the things that you can organize around, because it connects you to the place. Also, it helps you love the place a little more. So in Himachal, if we're talking about I mean, the shawl is not from Himachal, but like weaving, right? And wool work, and there's so much maths in it, there's so much material science in it, there's so much about animals in it, there's so much about the kind of landscape that offers food to goats. So you take that one thing that is good about your place, that is amazing about your place, and then you see how many things you can organize around that. So that I find very interesting as an exercise to do.
And I also think, like, if all of you can, best curriculum is if you can make your classrooms into museums which can be touched and felt,
It's a
Collections, yeah.
wow. Yeah.
not that you
Correct.
can't connect to.
What you and Nishant just said about the place-based aspect of it, it takes us to this very interesting part about perspectives that you bring to science. No, multiple perspectives you talk about in the article, where you talk about placing science in its historical and sociological context. Very,
Yes.
very, and you give us some really powerful examples there, and in those examples you show these connections, right, to really a more plural history and sociology, where indigenous knowledge, culture, local narratives, all that is woven, just like what Nishant was just talking about, the shawl, for instance. So here, what kind of disciplinary understanding? So do teachers have to, for instance, those who are teaching science, do they have to, sort of know more about history and sociology, have a better disciplinary understanding of history, sociology? How in Marudam, how does this happen? How do you, how do teachers, how do you discover and engage with this perspective so that you can integrate it into the classroom? Yeah, how do you do that? Would be something interesting for teachers, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think as if I can talk about it, as teachers, we do spend some time in a weekly meeting. Some of it is what we call nuts and bolts, and but the other is usually a discussion around something almost philosophical or touching upon sociological things, and that kind of creates a sensitivity in all of us, and we can share that. The other thing is, we don't have to be experts in everything, we just need to know who is, right? And so even if you're teaching something like metals, non-metals, what does it take to actually know a traditional metal worker in your area, to call him or her and ask them to talk about how they think of metals? These things, like, they're everywhere around us, we just have to have that sensitivity of who to ask.
Yeah, very, very true. Yeah. Purnima, did you want to add anything to that?
So I would say like I would say this resource creation. I don't know if when I don't know, like when I just a little bit the net went off in between for me, like 2 minutes. So
Okay.
I was not able to really catch on what you and Nishant shared, but I understand that it is about creating a resource, right? It's kind of that way. No.
So Nishant was basically, talking about how when you have your meetings, where, and also another where you sort of discuss even at almost at a philosophical level, he was saying. But the other important point I think he was also making was to invite people with that knowledge. So if somebody's a metal worker or a potter,
Yeah, so
yeah,
that's
that kind of
resource creation. So I would
resource
say, like,
creation.
when we say resource people, no, many people
Mm-hmm.
like call specialists. So how do you build resource is what I'm saying. Like, so I would say one is the difference between resourcefulness and resource creation. And resourcefulness is within your local space. Find what you want, like it could be weaving, or it could be like something of a tools, what kind of tools are there, and what, or it could be like what are the local trees here, a study of that, whatever. But that is resourcefulness. Resource creation is that you collaborate with other spaces who are doing some work. And for children, it's very important that even like you collaborate with scientists, it's fine, or you collaborate with people who are historians. I recently found that like, and then in Marudam there are like I keep saying that is by like we have these 6 areas which we've created as a resource. Okay, one is working with hands. So you have local artisans, you have local craft people who've worked a lot with hands, as well as farmers. In maybe like in a city, you will have many people who are non-teaching staff in schools who are not at all used as a resource, who know so much of natural medicines. But what are the children or anybody thinks of them as people just, like sweepers, they're just cleaning the school. How do you know what knowledge exists there? Right. So you have to create this kind of resource where everybody can contribute to something, right? So it could be working with hands, it could be contemporary issues of like just garbage and really looking at the whole chemistry of daily use, like what kind of thing. It could be like I'm saying, it could be just uh, reading out something openly, which are very big priority now. Like let's say you have got a nest in the school, please don't disturb. But how do you do that collaboratively? You know. So what I'm saying is building resource and a knowledge through meetings, and because there will be diverse people with like Nishant said in the beginning, diverse people will have diverse kind of knowledge systems, right, their own. But how do they contribute to something is, I think, resource building. And for me, a recently very fascinating thing is that when we're doing this, one project that I did with children is, how did you get your pencil, or what was the whole process of you having this pencil. Was very fascinating. And you have to look at wood, from cutting, from how pencil is made, to the whole history of wood, timber. There's so many things to look at that, like a project, right? So I think that project based learning facilitates for resource building. Like so, like Nishant was saying, in the meetings we can also discuss which project we're all combined going to take. Like let's say the whole school is doing a project, or is it only classrooms that are doing the projects? You know, sometimes it's nice to take a theme and explore for a whole school.
Mm. The
Then
whole
you're
collaborative, yeah,
collaborative, so
collaboration.
you're learning from inter
Yeah,
spaces. Like, yeah.
that's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah, lovely. And also, there was a very important point you had made in the article in this context. You were saying that it is important to discuss the motivations and intentions of both scientists and other contributors to scientific knowledge in the context of historical and historical context particularly. So, would you like to say something about that, just for our people who are listening in, sort of motivations and intentions of both scientists? That was very
I
interesting.
I would
Yeah,
say in a world. So this is something very deep right now. What you're
that is
asking, like
true.
in a world where to even say, like Saurav was saying, we are a master, I think is a big mistake. You know, mastering science is something like for me, like it's something you're really entering into. So there is science which is definitely destroyed so much. We've got so many stories. There is science which has actually helped in constructing things, right? And to clearly have a critical thinking about that as a teacher, like if you're collaborative or if you're really finding the science, you have to be very honest. You know, when people have questioned superstitions, they've been so much like systems have been so cruel to those people. Where when they challenged the so-called ways everybody was thinking. Science has shown that. On the other hand, when people were living, like science is also so much misused by the whole consumer and global world for their own reasons, and there has been manipulations in what levels, wars, fights, destruction. We've got only 90% of sea
Yeah,
life we have destroyed. We have 8% of sea life left in our world.
yeah, yeah,
And the same kind of things happen with science, right? So
right.
to really bring that criticality,
Yes,
not underestimate children
right.
with not being able to understand the complex world. I
Mm,
don't
mm,
think we should lie to the children. That
mm,
doesn't mean that we have to say everything is hopeless,
mm, mm.
but
Right,
can't just keep science out of their lives
right.
by saying nonsense and untrue things.
Mm, mm,
You can't say when your groundwater is going, it's okay to flush toilets. How
yeah.
is it okay? How is it okay?
Mm,
It's the most
mm,
unreal, untrue thing you're saying to anyone.
mm.
That doesn't mean they have to always live in guilt. That's not what I'm saying, you
Yeah,
know. But
yeah.
can't also as a science teacher, you have to bring why you're doing what you're doing within a
Mm,
class.
mm,
The
mm,
joy of learning. The
mm,
joy of learning, but inclusive. And
mm.
inclusive is not about only the human being, it is the
Right.
non-human world. Are
Mm,
you including, like there was a beautiful rule we had in Marudam, and I feel very happy. Like in the school assembly once, children were plucking all the berries from Ooty apple tree, and they were like amazing berries. They're the most tastiest berries. So they were eating, so much greedy eating. And then one child said, Akka, like, I know why you put the rule that we are eating too many berries and we're not supposed to share. And one other child said, I know, Akka, because we have to share with the birds. It's not about sharing only with yourselves.
right, right. Yeah, very, very true. Yeah.
True. So, in your article, you have mentioned actually that you're breezing multiple, but you're bringing multiple perspective. And as far as I understood, that you have also given examples. How can we use these perspectives and can bring together in our other schools also? There is other schools other than Moruzam also we can do it. For example, you gave example of insects, example of leaves, and you said that the kind of questions we have to ask. We have to be careful. We should not ask very much open-ended question. We have to guide the observation also, and it also shows that in a classroom of diverse background of students, where classrooms are diverse backgrounds, particularly the mainstream schools, the teachers face. It is also, it seems that the kind of pedagogy you are saying, this can be also can be implemented in mainstream. That is, a diverse background of students also can be can be integrated in an inclusive fashion. For example, you gave the insect example and you said that ask them to observe first and then to classroom. So, would you like to comment on how to deal diverse background of students in a mainstream school, other than the kind of examples you have already given?
Nishant, you have some. You're muted, Nishant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think some unknown finger is muting and unmuting. I have to wait for it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're talking. Are you, just to clarify, sort of, are you asking about diverse children learning in the same classroom? Is that the
Yes.
question?
Yes. Yeah. Or
And in
what
the
I'm saying is,
main,
yeah, I'm saying that you have already given example where you can include diverse background of children in a classroom and give them meaningful sense of classroom learning. So I am
Hmm.
saying, would you like to give one more example that can be implemented in mainstream schools with a diverse background of
yeah,
students?
I can think of one thing immediately, and Nishant, if you can think by
Go
then
ahead.
also, So one immediate thing is that there is something called young scientists, right? And young archaeologists. There are young researchers. There are young readers, right? You can all these young, and there are also like mature readers and thinkers. All these are among children and teachers, right? So what you do in the classroom is that you in mainstream schools within the classroom, I would say they should have an inch tape, a scale, a lens, some thread, twine, some craft materials like scissors, paper, all that you can think of, which you would have like with to work with hands. Very important in classrooms. And also to not centralize libraries. If you want young thinkers and young readers, you should have small books available in baskets or something like wherever you're tangible within the classrooms, available, which are sensitively chosen, which can be exploratory within the classroom. Okay. If a child at point of time, I really love lenses. And I don't know if what is that scope, Nishan? That
Fold
they
scope. The fold scope, no? The fold scope?
fold
Fold, fold
the scope.
scope. Fold scope. Yeah, fold scope.
Those kind of activities, I found Arvind Gupta toy making activities are so wonderful, like to have the straw, those all those kind of things there. For older children, they should have I would say, like, the microscopes don't have to be centralized. You've got like these kuti things, no, like bug boxes and like so many other kinds of things where you can note down. You can also have like lots of chart, not only digestive system, India map, that kind of chart, but have maps which you have lot of illustrative charts and books like atlases, different kind of atlases, a lot of charts which have like the stones, graded precious stones. There are a lot of oceans, like Nishant was saying, beautiful drawings and exploration of like habitats, from local habitats. So much work is being done in these areas. So, like, really, if you go search, you would find these kind of charts. Regularly keep changing those charts in the class. Everyone should have a globe, right? Different kinds of sensitive globes. So, I'm saying make your class more investigative and make sure, don't keep saying that, like, let's say there is an inch tape. I think many times you have 1 inch tape. If you have 40 children, you should have at least 10 inch tapes. If you got 40 children, you should at least have 3 globes within a class. Like if you have 100, then I think you should have, like, let's say factory school and the mainstream school, I think you should have then 20, like, I don't know, if 4 into 5, 20 globes maybe in the class. I don't know. What I'm saying is have resources which are investigative, not just a rule like, you have only got to do this, right? I think we can create our own museum corners for sure. You know, there was one, like, last thing I want to say is, like, we created one corner where a child actually had a skeleton of a snake. It was a beautiful, like, he brought a whole skeleton of a snake that he found on the road.
Wow.
It was fascinating. Like,
Ah,
and how much time we explored after that about reptiles. It was
wow.
and that was a mainstream school. You had a child who observed like a barn owl and came and shared in the class in a mainstream school. It's kind of like
Yeah.
there's a lot of hope.
Yes,
So
there is.
please don't think that in a mainstream school you don't have a forest inside. You will create it very soon, like within your spaces.
And there are walls and there are insects in the crevices of the walls.
And just outside you will have so much.
Ah,
These in the I have seen in this the mainstream school, the staircases. What life comes under the staircase? Animals are so clever. They know where to live. Always
so,
look below the stones.
yeah, yeah. So, I think, we could be going on and on and on, and I'm going to come to really the last question, actually, of our conversation. For me, it's almost as if our conversation has just begun, but it's, we've been going on for a while, and I'm sure, we should be wrapping up. So, just one last question that I wanted to ask here was that, you had said towards almost the end of the article that there is much more, and I'm sure you'll say it even now, there's much more to share in terms of what we actually see in specific individual and collective learning journeys. So, and also the shifts that you have seen in students and teachers, individuals as well as collectively. So I'm just wondering, even if with one example we can, if we can sort of wrap up this conversation with just one example of, you know, any shift that you've seen, which much more than you can talk about, but yeah, it'll be a nice way to sort of wrap up our conversation.
I think one kind of shift that we see quite often is some kind of self-motivated learning, right? So you're doing something in class, you don't know if it actually interested everyone so much or how much,
Mm,
but then you can see if you see a child following up.
mm,
So, for example, once I walked into the library and I saw somebody following up on some of the plants that we'd seen in a walk, like in a book of plants, and quite a
mm,
dry taxonomy book, but it had also pictures. And
mm,
for me, that was something that I didn't know that about the child, that they are doing that. So there's those kind of shifts. There's also shifts where children start questioning things that earlier they used
mm,
to just take
mm.
for as a given in the school, that we have to do like this, and so they'll
Yeah.
suddenly be like, why do we have this, this
Mm,
time? Why do we have a circle time? Why do we have this class?
mm.
And they're not always just to disrupt. Those are shifts in, like, understanding that, oh, this is not something that this is not how I would do it, and
That's right.
so what is the logic? No, so those are very beautiful things to see. Yeah. In that moment, maybe you might feel challenged, but in general, in hindsight, they're very beautiful things to see. Yeah.
I would say, because Ranjit had also said about dynamics, you
Yeah.
know, and I would say that's a very, very beautiful word. And I see shifts if we organize a class properly and we're attending to science in this way. There is a shift in the dynamics of the class.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what you would find is not only would an individual take to it, a group of children will start taking to it.
Mm.
So
Mm.
if they become really exploratory, others join in.
Mm.
Okay, and if you lay the the ground rules properly, in the sense that the participation is very important, that
Mm.
everybody is shared, then you have presentations where your presentations are heard by everybody.
Right.
Everybody looks at everybody else's work,
Right.
and then comments. Everybody has a chance to give feedback. So many
Right.
things. The culture of a class, you
Yeah.
know, is set properly by the
Yeah.
teachers and the adults. You
Yeah.
would see that the whole dynamics of the class shifts
Right. Right.
towards more of learning and contributing, rather than only like just saying without thinking, like
Mm.
so encouraging more like that. So in this, I would say one nice example I would like to give is that, like, when you're doing like graphs, like when you observe and draw graphs, they're very good representation, like pie charts.
Mm.
The
Mm. Mm.
whole representation of statistical data.
Mm. Mm.
Children love to see complexity and presentation. They don't like only simplicity.
Right.
Right?
Right. Right.
You
True.
like you just put it across like how a research scholar would put it, right?
Right.
Like, I have studied and I found this thing. And how do you represent them? You know?
Mm.
And that whole process of observation, inferences, thinking, is that it's not only your observation, it's many people's observations. So when
Mm.
all that is shared in presentations, you come to
Mm.
a conclusion collaboratively. What have you
Wow.
learned?
Mm. Mm.
What have you learned out of this experience?
Wow. Thank
That,
you.
that,
My
that
God.
is
Yeah.
something to consolidate. Yeah, very important. Like, I
Right. No,
had
no,
one,
absolutely.
yeah, I had one experience recently, like when I was doing about Indus Valley,
Mm.
and we were showing them photographs of Indus Valley. Children had so many questions about different animals which were there during that time, right? And not only that, they asked like, Akka, like how did they make those paints?
Mm.
How
Mm.
what did they use to string the beads?
Mm.
Was there
Mm.
cotton grown? Was there
Mm.
needle? If needle was made, what metal was it? And I'm talking about 10-year-olds.
Wow. Wow.
Just in showing photographs, they had so many questions, and none of those questions I was inadequate in answering. So then I had to go into the archaeology thing, and I asked some 2 3 people, historians, and then history teacher of another school, and she
Mm.
helped me so much with all these answers, and she collected so much information for them, for the children, to answer all these questions.
Mm. Wow. Yeah.
Very nice to have these young researchers in our classes.
True, very true. And
Such a
also just the
resource.
collaborative, yeah, and the whole collaborative. But my God, so I think, I mean, I can't just sort of thank you both enough. And if there's a phrase or a word you want to leave as your parting thought, Purnima, I think I know yours. You used it when we were talking last. But just before, yeah, just a parting thought, and then we'll sort of say thank you. Yeah. Anyone,
Yeah,
anything
no,
that
I
you want to
definitely want to thank both of you because very seamlessly you've taken us through this conversation. And also, thank you for those four questions that we got from outside because that's our only sense of who else is out there. But there must be people
Yeah.
listening patiently to us, and it was a good feeling to get questions from there. And yeah, I think in this whole thing of science, and I think the issue was about how to teach if as if the earth mattered. So I think as long as science inculcates a feeling of care, I think it's really valuable. And if it doesn't, then I do question it because I feel like that's something that's very important. We have to together care for where we live. That yeah.
That would be yours. Yeah. Thank you, Nishant. That's really wonderful. Yeah. And to bring us back to the theme. And Purnima,
I think as teachers, learning is endless. And then I find for human beings also learning is endless. And
yeah.
I would say complacence I have never liked. To just say that, okay, I have figured out. I don't think we've ever figured out. In fact, if we think we've figured out, we'll make more mistakes. Like so, I would say keep that journey of learning alive for all of us together. Like, yeah.
I love what you said in our first conversation. Joyful learning, you said, and that has stayed with me.
Joyful learning, and it has to be joyful for everyone. And therefore, what Nishant says, care is
Yes.
very, very important for the earth. It has to be joyful for everyone, not just for
Lovely,
us. Yeah.
lovely, lovely. And what a wonderful way to end this conversation on that note of joy for everyone. So, Purnima and Nishant and all of people who've joined us today, sabko bahut bada thank you, really, and for staying with us for so long. We may also not have been able to take on other questions that people may have had. So we'd apologize, but if you have more questions that you would like to ask both Purnima and Nishant, please do send it to us at iwonder@apu.edu.in, and we'll do our best to get them, answered. Do join us again for our next webinar on the 13th of April, 2022. And for all those who have not subscribed to iWonder yet, we hope you do so now after this wonderful conversation. Thank you all. And once again, thank you, Poornima and Nishant.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Saurav and
Thank
Radha and
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, bye-bye. Bye.